Hello, hello. Welcome to my first ever live stream. Looks like there's about four people in the four people watching. Feel free to say hello in the chat. I'd love to hear who I'm talking to. Um, Forgive me. I'm sure I'm going to do some silly things and make some mistakes here today, but it's all here for us all to learn something. I will learn about live streaming, and maybe you can learn something about Go. Pardon me. I was going to try to do my full webcam, but it's already cropped weird, so I have to learn how to use my streaming software better. I see one hello. Hi there. So today, what I'm going to do, I did a survey on LinkedIn and on Mastodon to ask what to work on today, and the winner really was to add a new feature to a project. However, I'm not going to quite do that this time, and for two reasons. One, I do want to do that, but I'm going to do that probably next week, so that I've learned from the mistakes for this week. This week, I'm going to also start on something a little bit simpler to get started on. I'm going to delint a project, but it's a real project, an open source project that I work on called Gopher.js. I'm going to add Golang CI lint support to it. So if that sounds interesting to you, I hope you'll stick around and watch. If you have questions as I'm going or suggestions, if you notice I do something stupid, just leave a comment and I will try to respond. There is a little bit of lag, of course, though. I think about a minute maybe from the time I speak until you see the video. So if I don't respond immediately, that's why. Let's see here. I have an error from YouTube. I'm not sure if it's a problem. I don't know if you notice video problems or audio problems, let me know. YouTube is complaining about something, but I'm not sure if it's important. So if you see problems, just let me know, and I'll try to fix it. Otherwise, I'm going to get started. So if you don't know, Gopher.js is a Go to JavaScript transpiler. You might call it a compiler, but technically it's a transpiler since it goes from one language to another. Let me just pull up their website here so everybody has a sense of what I'm talking about. I'll share the website. It's the website, meaning GitHub. I'll share that on the screen here. So Gopher.js converts Go code into JavaScript code. And I am one of the two maintainers of this project, probably the least active of the maintainers. Right now, the other maintainer is working when he has time to get generics support into it. So we're still stuck kind of on Go 1.17, 1.18 right now. Basically, it supports Go 1.18 except for generics. So, and the generic support is in progress. And I've been working on other stuff, fixing some bugs and so on. And I've been noticing, maybe I'll just demonstrate in my IDE as I'm editing some of the code, my linter is complaining all the time. And I don't like that. So I'm going to try to fix that today. Let's just pull up some files here. If I save, I expect the linter will start telling us silly things. Not in this package. I was playing in different. Oh yeah, there we go. So here we have a bunch of linter warnings, empty blocks, and all sorts of things. So my goal today is to configure the linter to run in GitHub Actions, and then actually start cleaning up some of the lint so that it's a cleaner project. So that's what I'm going to do today. And if we get done with that early, then I'll jump into something else. Probably won't be done completely, but we might get to the point where it's boring to watch, so I might stop. But we'll see what happens. I see two more people said hello. Hello to both of you. Thanks for watching. So the first thing I'm going to do is set up GitHub Actions. And I'm going to create a file called lint.yaml in the workflows directory. If you're not familiar with GitHub Actions, it's pretty straightforward, but you're probably familiar with some sort of tool like this, GitHub Actions or Jenkins or something. I'm just going to tell it what commands to run. Now, I've, of course, run GitHub Actions with Golang CI lint on a large number of projects in the past, so I'm going to copy the config from one of those rather than doing it from scratch. I like to save time, and I don't think you'll want to watch me reading docs to figure out how to do it from scratch again. So let me find that on my on an existing project. I'm in a different window. Sorry, there's nothing to watch here. It's a work project. I'm not allowed to share. Otherwise, I would be putting it on the screen. Ba-da-da-dum. All right, so I've just copied that to my home directory, so I will move that from. All right, now if I open up the editor again, we should see. Gotta reload the file. Oh, I put it in the wrong place. No wonder. All right, so here we are with the version I've copied from another project. It has some things we don't need, so I'm going to delete those. We don't need to install these dependencies for this project. We should also be using Go 1.18 since that's what the latest version of Gopher.js uses. Or 18.10, I believe. We don't use GoGenerate in this project anymore. We did until just recently, but I fixed that, so I can delete that. And we have a new version 0.3. So I think this should be what we need. Let me go ahead and create a branch and add that file. All right. Now I want to add the configuration for the linter. Why don't I, while I'm doing that though, I'll push this up to GitHub and we can see what's happening. Because it should fail. It should run with a default configuration, and I imagine that will fail also. If it doesn't, then I'll learn about that too. But let's see. Why isn't it updating here? 5 days ago. Did I start this 5 days ago? That doesn't make sense. Oh, because I forgot to commit something, that's why. Let's try that again. There we go. That's what I was expecting. Now, this should kick off a job in the background. And we'll get back to that in a moment. We'll see where it fails, assuming it does fail. But you can see the other CI jobs are running now, and there's the new one running. Let me just pull that up, and it'll be on the screen when we're ready. Meanwhile, I'm going to work on copying my linter config from the same project as before to here, and then we'll tweak that to be what we want. Right, so that file is called golangci.toml. Oops. And this is going to be a big messy one because of the custom configuration again for this project. I'm going to delete a bunch of stuff from here though. Now I heavily documented or commented this file for this this client I was working with, just so they could see everything. We could look at all the linters, even the ones we're not using. I'm going to work on cleaning that up for this project. I don't feel like that's valuable here. But the first thing I'm going to do is delete a whole bunch of these exceptions that we've created because I don't think they apply to this project. And then we can add our own exceptions as appropriate. So I'm not going to explain what all these exceptions are right now. Basically, I can create a rule that says for this type of file and this linter and this exact source code or error message, or whatever, just ignore that. So that's what these are. They're using MongoDB and some different logging capabilities that just created some false positives. So I'm going to delete that. And I'm going to remove this. This forbids the use of these three functions, log.fatal, log.panic, fmt.print. In general, those are things I don't like anyway, but I don't think those apply to this project. So I'm going to delete those here, and we can add them again if they're appropriate. What else? That's probably about it. Well, there's one here that tells you not to use interface, the empty interface, and to use any instead. Here it is. And I want to disable that one for now. Since we're not, I guess we're technically using, actually maybe we shouldn't. I'll leave that here. I was debating because, as I mentioned, we don't have generic support yet in Gopher.js. However, we still build Gopher.js using Go 1.18. So it should be fine to enable this rule here. So if it bothers me later, I'll change it. And then here's some things we don't care about. Actually, I do want to leave this here. I just want to change this to Gopher.js. So what this controls is the imports ordering. So I use a linter called GCI. It's a little bit more strict than GoFumped or Go imports. It gives you, it lets you specify your ordering, and I'm choosing 3 groups. One is the standard library, that's normal, and then default is anything that isn't specified elsewhere, and then third is anything under the Gopher.js package namespace, which should just be the things within this same repository. Sometimes, so that the one I copied from had 4. That doesn't matter for this project, but you could have as many as you want if you want to specify different groupings. All right, I'm not going to go through all of these just yet. Instead, I'm going to save this. Let's look over at our pull request and see how it's going. It actually succeeded. Oh, you know, and I know why it succeeded, actually. That shouldn't have surprised me. It did because I forgot something. I forgot that I had this only new issues set to true. So it would only trigger in CI for new lint failures, which is a really good idea usually on a legacy project anyway, because you don't want to have to clean up all tens or hundreds or millions of thousands of errors before you can merge your CI change. So that's why it didn't fail, because I didn't add any new lint failures in the process of creating that rule. So that's good, actually. Now I'm going to save this. 900 seconds is too long for this. Let's say 1 minute. This is a small enough project. I hope 1 minute's enough. So I'm going to save this now. Do some reformatting of, oh, I don't care about that actually. I'm going to undo that. I will probably make that change later, but right now I don't want to. I don't want to, it's unrelated to the change I'm trying to make, so I don't want to commit that. Oh, there's one other thing I need to remove here before I even go, and that's this new from rev. I don't need to remove it, I need to change it. What this does is it tells Golang CI lint when run locally to only consider changes that have been added since this commit. Of course, this commit comes from the other project that I copied it from, so I need to find a commit for this project. So I'll do that with log, and I'll just take the most recent commit from master, and I'll put that there. So now if I run Golang CI lint locally, I should get 0 failures because I haven't added any new problems. Let's just validate that to be certain. Missed a bracket. Uh-oh. Not surprised. I missed a bracket somewhere else. I'm not sure where. I'll go try to look for it. So down here. If you want to let me know where I missed the bracket, I'll go look for it. All right, so no failures. Although there is a warning here that's worth mentioning. I don't really like this dead code linter, but even though it's deprecated, it says that it's been replaced by one called unused. In my experience, they actually catch different things, so I still use dead code even though it's technically missing. Oh, I didn't miss a bracket. Someone else did. Oh, got it. Okay. No problem. No problem at all. All right. So let me push this. Let me see what I have my slide status here. Yeah, let me add that. All right. Now here's where the interesting part starts. here's where I actually start removing lint and discovering if I even like this configuration. This is something I usually go through on every new project I join, unless they already have a strong linter running. But most projects I join have no lint being run, or it's very minimal. And so I like to add new lint rules because this is one of the easiest and cheapest ways to start discovering bugs and improving the quality of code without necessarily really even thinking about it. So let me kind of show you how I would do that. So what I'll often do is scroll up to the top of my configuration here, and I have a whole bunch of these things that are commented out. I'm going to comment them all out right now. So select them all, comment them all out. I'm also going to comment out the new from Rev. Then I'm going to go back and I'm going to uncomment some of these one by one. So I'm going to uncomment, I'll just do these both at the same time, unused and dead code. So the only linters running at this moment will be unused and dead code, and they're not checking for new synths. So they're checking for all of the history of the entire project. Let's see if there's any unused code in this project. If there is, we can just delete it, and then we'll solve that problem. So let's run the linter here and see what happens. Ah, we found one thing that's unused. And this might actually be a false positive. Let's look. 41, let me zoom in so it's a little easier to read here. So I'm not sure if it is a false positive, but this is a test. I'm not sure how this test is being used, but let's see if we can find out. Well, the easy way to find out. Oh, okay, I see. So this is something that I'll bet you've never seen in your life and will never ever use. But there's a directive in Go called link name. And the reason I'm sure you've never seen it is because I had never seen it. It's used for some internal nasty compiler stuff. It's a way to link things between files that, as far as I know, it's only used within the Go project itself in certain parts of the compiler, maybe in parts of the standard library. But it's a way to like do a sort of an invisible dependency. You should never use it for that reason. It's ugly, but it allows for some certain optimizations. And this is testing that, and it's claiming, the linter is claiming that this bytes field is unused. And it probably is technically, but I think that's part of the test. So I'm going to actually just disable that here. And that should make the linter happy. Yeah, the linter's happy now. But it also reformatted, no, I just reformatted a little bit of the, oh, I see what it did. It grouped the 3 type declarations into one. That's fine. I don't mind that. So let me add that change. Whoops. All right. Now notice I didn't commit the change to the config file. That's still in my working copy because I don't really want to make that change. I just want to discover the lint and clean it up as I'm going along. Hi, Enrico. All right, so we're done with that file now, and I'm done with those linters. That was the only unused code in the code base. That's great. So I'm gonna comment those back out and go on to the next one. Unparam is a nice one that finds function parameters that aren't used. So let's see if we have any of those in this project. We do. They're both in tests though, so these might also be false positives. Let's have a check. Just hit save and then it'll pop up right here. Oh, it's finding a bunch of other ones. Oh, that's more noise than I was hoping for. So I'm going to close that again and I'll just go off of this. Line 229. Now it claims that size always receives the same value. Okay, so it's not that it's unused per se, it's that it always receives the same value. Yeah, it does seem like it does. So I have a couple options here. Okay, I see some comments here that the sound is bad. I think I know actually what's happening. Let me see if I can fix that in my recording here, or my streaming. I don't know if I can, but let's see. The thing is that my microphone only records one channel, so I want to make it duplicate to 2 channels, but I don't know if I can do that in this software. I'm looking for how to duplicate those channels. I don't see how to do that. Let me make a note. I'm probably just going to run with it for this time, but I'll make a note to try to fix that for the next time. Sorry for those of you, especially listening with earbuds. I know it's annoying to only hear out of one side of your head, so I really apologize for that. I wish I could fix it. I don't see how to do that, but I'll look into that for next time. I also see a great question. Where do I get a standard Golang CI lint to just import and use? I have a video that goes through a simple one you can start with. Let me find a link and I'll just share it to you right now. And I can also share the one I'm using today if you're interested in that one. I'm using a different keyboard than usual because my normal keyboard is a mechanical one. It's very loud, so I'm not finding the buttons I need. My key mapping is wrong. Can't get the @ sign. Blah blah blah. All right, so I'm going to share a link to a video about I did a year and a half ago, maybe I think, that includes a link. I'll give the link directly as well to a standard configuration file you can use as a starting point. So there's the link to the video, and here's a link to. Well, that's a terribly long link. Hang on a second. Here's a link to a sample config file you can use. It might be a little bit outdated. The linter is updated every few months, so there might be some obsolete configuration in here, but it's still a good basic starting point if you want to start with that. And when I'm done recording today, I'll put a link to the file I'm using in the video and in the stream. I'll put in a link in the show notes of this as well, so you can look at that exact same one. All right, so back, sorry for the distraction, back to delinting here. So I have a couple options here. The linter is complaining that I call this make map function with the exact same argument every time, and I'm just always passing the same constant. So there's a couple ways I could solve this. One is I could just remove this and always use that constant in line. I don't like that as well because it kind of hides some magic within that make map. Like I expect a function called make map to take an argument of size. I could rename it to be make map 10,000 or something like that. But I feel like if we look at the places where the code is being used, it's being done in a benchmark. We can easily look up what the size is. I feel like it's pretty readable code already. So I kind of want to leave it the way it is. So I think I'm going to just silence the linter here so that it doesn't complain anymore. This one's called unparam. So the way to silence that is I do a comment, no lint, colon, the name of the linter, and then a comment explaining it. Now, technically speaking, the only thing you need to do is this. In fact, I could just do this, no lint, and that would disable all linters on that line. I like to be much more specific, and so I actually have linters that enforce the strict lint comments. So the lint comment style I use has no space between the comment character and the directive, which is considered the correct way to do it. You may have noticed that when we saw the go directive, the go, was it link something? I can't remember what it was called, link name. Or if you use go generate or anything like that, or go build directives, the standard is to have no space between the comment character and the directive. So the same applies here. And then, as I said, I have linters that enforce strict no lint comments. So I need to put the name of the linter, which is unparam, and then a comment explaining why. There's nothing more frustrating than looking at some old code that has a comment disabling the linter, but it doesn't explain which linter it's disabling or why it's disabling it. And you don't know if it actually is a false positive or somebody was just being lazy or whatever. So I think it's good practice to do this. Always put a description. And so now I need to think of a description. I just explained my reasoning for leaving it as it is. How can I put that concisely? I'll just go like that. I hope that's explanatory enough. And there was one other failure in a different file. Oh, no, it's a different file. So let's open that file. Test line 557. Yeah, this one I'm going to change the code. So we're calling. I think I will. We're calling tuple 2, and we always return a nil error. Let me see how it's used. Oh, it's being called from here. So what is it? This must be part of the test again. I'm not sure what it's testing. It's not a very well described thing. It's testing some sort of implicit casting. The mic sounds weird, huh? Are you talking about it's not coming out of one channel only, or is it something else now? Oh, am I using the wrong mic? That's a possibility. Let me check. Looks like it's using the right mic. Testing, testing. I could switch to my webcam mic if that might help the channel audio. Let me try that. How does this sound? I should be speaking through my webcam now. I'm not sure if it's working. It looks like it's working. Do I sound better or worse? Do I sound better or worse through speaking to my webcam now than I did speaking to the microphone a moment ago? Sounds better. All right, if anybody feels differently, please let me know. Background, yeah, there's gonna be some background noise. Let me see if I can, that's why I use the microphone. Let me see if I can maybe help that a little bit. I have a fan running here, I'll turn it off. I hear worse. Worse. All right, I just turned off the fan. Is it any better, or should I go back to the microphone? All right. Sounds like it's worse. I'm going to go back to the microphone. All right, back to the microphone. Sorry about that. I'll try to get this all fixed for next time. All right. All right. So what was I saying? I'm not exactly sure what's being tested here, but it really looks to me like this error value, even though it's nil, is intended to always be nil. So I'm going to silence this one also. All right. So the linter should have no failures at this point. I'm going to add these. Oh, there's some. You know what? This reminds me. I should actually reformat the entire repo first, because this is also annoying. When I save the files, it's reformatting it using gofumpt, which reindents some things and changes some things around. I don't want that to be mixed in with my lint fixing. So I'm gonna cancel. Let me try again here. Let me see. I'm gonna commit only the relevant changes here. All right. And I'm going to check out master, and I'm going to reformat the entire repository using gofumpt, so that I don't have these changes coming up as I'm doing the other changes. So now it's you see it's changed all of these files. If you're not familiar, I should introduce gofumpt. It's a nice little tool. I imagine you all heard of gofumpt. GoFMT, which is the official Go formatter command. But gofumpt, spelled with F-U-M-T instead of F-M-T, is a stricter formatter that I happen to like better. It's a subset of Go FMT, which means that if you run gofumpt first and then gofumpt second, you won't have any new changes added. So it completely conforms to gofumpt, but adds a few other stricter rules, and that's what you're seeing happening in this diff here. Like you see, it doesn't like having the two curly braces on the same line. It prefers to split them up to make them align a little bit more consistently. It groups if you have rather than having two or more var or types or whatever on subsequent lines. It groups them together like this. It enforces a space. I was talking about spaces with comments that Go directives do not have a space, but regular comments should, so it enforces that. It's also reordered an import here. So it's various things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and commit this as its own commit. And I'm going to push that up. And I'll go ahead and create a pull request for that. And we'll see if my co-maintainer likes the idea of merging that. to put a link to the GoFump tool because I don't even know if he's familiar with this one. So this way he can have a look and make a decision. All right. All right, let's see what's in the chat here. So why is tuple 2 called from tuple 1? That's a great question, and I'm not exactly sure. Let's just look at it again and see if we can make sense of that. Did I already close that file? No, it's still here. So keep in mind that what this project does is it compiles Go into JavaScript, and this particular test runs in Node. So it gets compiled into JavaScript and then executed to see if the compiled the translated code works as intended. So I imagine there was a bug somewhere that if you had a similar construct, it was not executing everything correctly. So let me see what it's doing here. So it's checking that the return value of 14 is passed all the way up the call chain, and that tuple 2 gets called. I would imagine that somewhere along the line, this was getting optimized away and not being executed. This tuple 2 wasn't being executed. And this is a test to make sure that happens. Although it's talking about an implicit cast, which confuses me a little bit. Because I'm not sure what it's casting. I mean, oh, I see what it is. Okay, here's what it is. Well, so you see tuple 1 returns an empty interface and an error. And tuple 2 returns an int and error. So it's doing some sort of check to make sure that this int to interface conversion works correctly. That's what's happening here. Why the error is involved, I'm not sure. But that's what it's trying, that's what it appears to be testing, that this int to interface to untyped constant check is happening correctly. There's still some magic in there and voodoo in there I don't understand, but that appears to be what the test is about. I hope that answers the question. All right, let's get back to delinting. Actually, before I do that, though, I'm going to do some git voodoo. So I just created this branch called GoFumped that reformats the entire repo, but I'm working on this linter branch, right? I'm going to rebase my linter branch on top of my GoFumped branch so that I don't keep seeing those changes. And then assuming that my co-maintainer approves the merge of that, I'll merge that one separately, and then I'll rebase again, and that will remove all the formatting changes from the pull request. I have a conflict here, not a big deal, I'll just fix it. I'll just fix it by copying this. I'm not sure exactly what changed, but oh, it grouped those types. That's not a big deal. Another conflict, probably the same sort of thing. Yeah, not tuple 2 we just changed. So once again, I'll just copy my change from there to here. I think it's exactly the same anyway, but I'm sure it works that way. Verify that my diff resolution, oops. Right, that looks right. All right, so I'm ready to continue on the delinting path. Now, before I continue, I'm gonna talk about one other way I sometimes delint stuff. Rather than going through one linter at a time, Sometimes I'll just be brave and do all the linters at once. So in that case, I'm just going to comment out this new from Rev. And I'm going to try this. I might regret this, but I'm going to see what happens when I give it a shot. I expect to see tons of failures here. Yeah, as expected. So what I would do in this case is I'll probably just open up a file. Let's pick one of these. It's failing. I'll hit save, and then let's see what errors I get. So here we have a whole bunch of things. I don't care about this one. This isn't a linter thing. I don't know what it's even there. What is it? I don't understand. Seems to be, let me restart the editor. It seems to be confused if that file exists. All right, so here we have missing case. Okay, so this is interesting. I don't know if I actually care about this in this repository, but there's a linter that tries to sort of evaluate if your enums are complete, and it's discovered that I have a switch case or switch statement on some, but not all, of the types of tokens that are valid. So let's see what we have here. Token logical and, logical or, arrow, etc., etc. And they're not all here. And that makes sense because it's checking something about a Boolean value, so it wouldn't be able to do all of them, only a couple of them. I have a feeling that this is a linter I don't want to be using, so I'm going to probably disable that linter. I need to find the name of it, though, and it's hiding off the edge of the screen here. Oh my gosh, it's a long line. I'm going to ignore that one for now, and then when I find it in the output of all of this, oh, here it is. Here it is. Exhaustive. So I'm going to disable that linter because I don't think it's going to be helpful in this package. Yep, I'm just going to delete that. All right, so that one won't be bothering us anymore. Let me make a commit. Okay. Let's look at the next one here. Let's save it to refresh the list of failures. All right, so here we're complaining about cyclomatic complexity. I often care about this because it often can lead to really complicated code, although I don't think I care about that in this project because this project performance and small, we're concerned about optimizing for both performance and for small output sizes, which means we're not optimizing often for code readability. So I probably just disable that linter here as well. And we also don't have any like junior developers on this team, so code readability is important, but it's not the most important on this project like it is on some. So I'm going to remove that one as well. So I'm going to just set this to true to disable this sub rule. So this one is a sub rule of the revive linter. It's not one of the main linters itself. Let's try it again here. Yeah, I just got a comment that the audio is only coming out of one of the channels. We discussed that a moment ago. I wasn't able to fix it this time, but I'm going to try to get that for the next one. So I apologize. I know it's annoying, especially if you're on headphones or earbuds. Really sorry about that. Wouldn't there be junior developers here in the future? That's a great question, and there might be. There might be. We do occasionally have people trying to contribute to the project, and many of them are juniors or certainly less senior, at least on this project, than we are. So yes, we do want to maintain some amount of readability. That's definitely true. But uh, like I said, it's not it's not the highest priority thing in something that's basically a compiler. You know, a compiler. I think I think it's safe to assume that people programming a compiler have a certain level of knowledge. It's more than somebody who's say writing a REST API or something like that. So that's kind of my thoughts here. If anybody else, if somebody joined the project and was confused by this and wanted to break those functions into smaller functions to improve readability, I wouldn't really be opposed to it, as long as it wasn't going to hurt performance in any significant way. On most projects, though, I really have a strong opinion that readability is the most important thing on most projects. This is a little bit of a special case, though, I think, at least in my opinion. So here it is telling us that bool value should have a function. I didn't say that right. Because it is a exported function, it should have godoc, and this is standard procedure in Go. What that means is it should have a description saying bool value, and then explaining what it does. And I believe that it should, because when I look at this, I don't actually know what bool value does. I see that it returns 2 bools, and I don't know what either one is. However, since I don't know what it does, I'm not in a position to document it either. I could try to figure out exactly what it does, and I probably will at some point, but I don't think I'll do that right now because I think it would be boring for you to watch me just try to read this. So I'll make a mental note to myself to come back later and add some godoc here. As I come across others, if it becomes clear what they mean, I'll add the godoc as it's going on here. Has break. I'm not really sure what that means either. So let's keep going. I'm going to disable this lint rule. I actually like this lint rule. What it does, it's called pre-alloc. It tells you when you can pre-allocate a slice, which can save memory allocations and make your program a little bit faster because your garbage collector doesn't have to run as often. So I'll demonstrate what this would look like, and then I'll tell you why I'm not going to actually do it. Oops, I shouldn't do var list colon. I should do this. So here, rather than just defining list as an empty slice of pointers to types.var, I've specified how long it should be, and I've made it the length of v.escaping. So here we're guaranteed that we only have one allocation. I don't know how long v.escaping is likely to be, but it could be anywhere, let's say, from 0 to 10,000 items long. If it goes to the size of 10,000, then as we're going through this loop and we fill up the existing capacity of that allocated list, it has to create a new one. And every time it does that, it does new allocation, which hits the garbage collector. So this is a way to improve your code, your code's performance, memory performance in particular. The reason I'm not going to do this here, though, is because I've had a conversation with my co-maintainer, and we have decided that we don't really care about this for this project because it's the kind of thing that runs once. You compile your code, and it's compiled, and it's done. If this was a long-running process, like on a web server or something, it would matter a lot more because those accumulations add up over time. But we have decided not to bother with that here. I would still be happy to do it, but he preferred not to, and I didn't want to fight about it. It wasn't something that really that important. So I'm going to disable that linter pre-alloc rather than fix the lint here. So I'll just delete that. Now let's head back over here and see what our next lint item is. So you think it won't be boring to see this thought process? I'm not sure if you can see my thought see my thought process, but I can try. I guess I can give it a shot. So the since we're still here on the screen, let's I'll tackle it. Why not? So I'm gonna just look through the code. I'm gonna try to vocalize what I'm thinking, but it might be difficult. I'm gonna try to vocalize what I'm thinking, and so my goal here is to figure out what is it doing and what do these two booleans mean that are being returned. And there's a lot of I'm really not good at the internal details of this particular part of the code, so it's maybe really hard for me to do, but I'm going to try. So we look up v. It's in a map info types. Info comes, it's passed into it. Okay, and we take the expression. So I don't know. Okay, I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to see where this is called from to get a little bit of context about what's going on. It's called recursively. Okay, where else is it called from? It's also called recursively here. It's called recursively several times. Okay. Where is it not called recursively? Let me do this a different way. Here's the one I want. So here's a really long function. This is one of the examples of why I don't want to enforce the linter that complains about cyclomatic complexity. In a lot of code, I would complain about a function this long. This is just it's an incredibly long function. But for this, I think for this use case, I don't think it's worth the effort of trying to change it. So translate expression also needs some documentation. But it takes an expression, an AST expression. AST is an abstract syntax tree. This comes from the official Go upstream library. You see that there in the package name or the import path, Go AST. So this is actually the same code that's used by the official Go compiler to parse Go source code into an AST. So we use the same logic that they do, same library. Then we take that AST and turn it into this expression. And this, I think, represents like pre-parsed or pre-generated JavaScript code. Yeah, so I think that I think str contains JavaScript, and then if necessary, we will add parentheses around it depending on the context. I think that's what that is. Let's look at the context here and see if that actually makes sense. Yeah, here. So here it's like emitting some kind of JavaScript. It's not really obvious what it's doing. Here you can see it's emitting global $global as a variable name or $module. So this is trying to emit JavaScript that may or may not have parentheses around it depending on the context where it's used. So that's where this bool value is being called from. So we're trying to translate some kind of expression into a JavaScript Boolean value, I believe. And so here we can get a clue for what the two values are. The first one is B, so that's probably the actual value, true or false. And then OK indicates whether or not the conversion happened successfully. Now I'm confused here. Oh, I see. We have e.x and e.y. I'm not sure what that means. Okay, I have a better clue. These are the only two places this function is called. I see. Okay. X, what are e.x and e.y? Ah, left operand and right operand. So I guess we're parsing some sort of statement, not just a Boolean by itself. But anyway, I think it's making some sense here. So I have enough that I can start to write this Go doc. I think that's a valid representation of what this does. Now I'm going to look at the code here and see if that all makes sense. So, so I don't know exactly what this info types thing is, but I don't think I need to. I think I can tell from the context what's happening. So if v is not null and its kind is a Boolean constant, then it returns the value of that constant. That makes sense and true because the conversion was successful. So that matches my description. If it was not a constant, then we continue on here. If it was a binary expression, a logical OR, and then if it gets all the way to the end, then returns false, false. I'm a little curious what happens in that false case. In the false case, it just falls through and I guess gets some sort of error. So I think I've described what that does now. So I hope that wasn't boring. Anyway, I've added some Godoc now, so I'm going to commit that as well. I'm going to add commits to. I'm doing one commit per change at this point, and that will make sense, I think, in just a moment why I'm doing that. I'll explain it. Okay, let's see where we are next. So here we have another failure. This is a good one. Confusing results. Unnamed results of the same type may be confusing. Consider using named results. I actually like this. It was confusing, wasn't it? When we first saw this, I didn't know what the two bools mean. I'm going to name this one OK. And this one, I'm just going to use the blank identifier because I think that's pretty self-explanatory that that is the value that we're getting. I don't think any name I added there would really add clarity. I mean, I could call it value or something, but that doesn't seem any more clear than just a blank name. So that's what I think I want to do there, although it's still complaining. I want to see why or if it's the same complaint. Oh. So the other thing it's complaining about is that I have, wait. Oh, yeah, that I have two bools in a row, so I can delete one of those, so I can simplify to this. So let's save that one. So I had a guess here in the chat that the reason I'm using small commits is to cherry pick, and that's not far off. And that's a great reason to do small commits like this. I'm gonna do a few more, and then I'll show you what I like to do here. Oh, here's some great ones. If you're using the test package in Go, you should be familiar with the t.helper, and we're apparently ignoring that here. So I'm going to try to fix that problem. So here's a helper function. You know it's a helper function because it takes a t or a testing.t argument, and then it might call t.errorf. So the problem is if this function fails and calls t.errorf, it's going to give a confusing error message. The error message is going to say that the test failed on line 54. Someone's going to look at line 54 of this file and go, wait, but I don't know which test failed because it was called from somewhere else. So if I add this, that signals to the test library that the error should report the caller to this function, not this function itself. And there's several places where it's noticed I should do this. I'm going to add this t.helper there as well. And here's another one. All right, so let's commit that. So I see a comment here for the bool value. Let's go back to that. Would naming it self instead of value maybe make sense? So I guess you mean something like this. I think I know why you would say that, because the self idiom is very common in many languages. I think it's not idiomatic in Go, so I think that would actually probably confuse many people. Some people it would make perfect sense to, because they're come from JavaScript or something. But I think if you had a seasoned Go developer look at that, they would be confused for two reasons. One, you would normally use self as the name of what Go calls a receiver, the object that is being acted upon. And there's no object here. This is just a function. And second, because Go doesn't use that self idiom, it would seem a little bit out of place. So yeah, I mean, this very well could be called value or val or whatever. Very, very much a judgment call here. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. If somebody chose to use self, I probably wouldn't reject that in a pull request review or anything like that. Or if they chose to call it value or whatever. But yeah, it's a judgment call. So there's not a right or wrong answer on this one. Let's see here. Oh, here's a good one. Receiver name should be consistent. So here we have a receiver on the type AST path. The receiver is called AP. And then right up here we have one called SRC. So they're inconsistent, which can be confusing if you're, especially for, these are short functions, so it's not a big deal. But for longer functions, if it takes up a page or two, you might be accustomed to seeing AP and think that means quote self or this or whatever. And then up here it's called SRC and you're not sure which is which. So this linter enforces that it should be consistent across all of the methods for a particular type. So I'm going to rename SRC to AP because I think that's better. It's shorter and it matches the name. I don't know what SRC means. I guess the reason it's called SRC is because it's a copy. It's making a copy of it. But still, I think it's better to use the consistent name. So I'm going to rename it to AP. I hit a wrong character. Let me try again. All right. Let me commit that. I'm probably going to disable this one also, this rule. What it's complaining about is that I'm modifying the receiver, or not the receiver, but the parameter. So n was taken as a parameter here, and I've modified it. I've actually shadowed it, which is kind of a separate thing. It's not wrong, but it can be confusing because now n is a completely different value than the old one. The old one in this case is unmodified, but it's shadowed. So it makes for unintuitive code. Yeah, the comment was that SRC is more common and understandable for copy, and that's true. And I'm sure that's why SRC was used for copy over there. But I still like being consistent personally. So this one, I'm uncertain on this one if we should actually fix it or not. I think I'm not going to change the code. The way to change this would be to use a different variable name. I could call it n2 or something. I'm actually just going to punt on this one. And by the way, that's a perfectly valid thing to do in your own code base too, I believe. If you come across something like this, you don't have to fix all the lens at once. That's the whole reason we have that configuration at the beginning to only alert about new failures. So if you're unsure, just leave it as it is. Come back to it later. Do a pair programming session with somebody. Talk out the details and figure out what makes sense in your code base. You don't have to fix everything at once. All right, here's another one. And I actually know what this one does. Is blocking. So what this does, this is core to how Go routines are implemented in Gopher.js. If you have a function that is blocking, that means it does any sort of I/O, talking to the network or a disk or whatever, then this function will return true if you pass that function in, or if any of the functions it calls in turn blocks. And every time that this returns true, the generated JavaScript sort of puts a little breakpoint in there that can defer to other Go routines that might be waiting. So that's what that one does. So let me add that commit. So we have an empty block here. We see an if statement, and then we do nothing, but then we do something else. So the natural thing to do is to reverse the sense of that, but I don't know if that actually would be a good idea here. I think we could. On the other hand, then I don't know where I would put this comment. So even though this looks a little bit silly, I think I'm going to leave it alone. Let me look at this other blank or empty block. So I could switch this one fairly easily. I'd have to move this comment somewhere. I don't know, having a comment like this is very easy to read, I think. So even though it could be done to change it, I think I'm not going to right now. Let's move on to something else. Here's an interesting one. Unused parameter. I love these. File set is not used. So at the very least, I can replace it with a blank identifier. And potentially, I can delete it entirely. Now it's complaining. Oh, it thinks the function's too long. I should delete that linter too. Function length, let me do that one. So there are actually two linters here. There's the function length and the one I talked about before called cyclomatic complexity. Function length just counts how many statements are in the function, and cyclomatic complexity counts how many branches there are, like for loops or if branches and stuff like that. They're related but not identical ways of calculating how long a function is. But I don't want either of those in this code base. Now it's complaining. Oh, it should have a comment, and it should. Before I add a comment, I'm going to see how many places are calling this and if I can delete that argument entirely. I think I can. So I'm going to try it. I'm going to delete this argument entirely since it's not being used. I like deleting code. Now, of course, I have some compile failures because the type checking fails, but I can go to these places and delete, was it the second argument? Yeah, the second argument. So I can delete the second argument here. Oops. I'm going to do the same thing here. And let's see if anything else breaks as a result. The only reason I can think it would break is if this were matching an interface, but I don't think it is. It's just being called directly. So I think that's done. So let's look at what I've done so far. Obviously, I have a lot of lint still that could be cleaned up, but I need to end a little bit earlier than I initially thought. So I have about 20 minutes left. So we can look at the log here and see that I've added a bunch of small lint cleanup fixes. And now I'm going to show you the reason I like to do these independently, especially if I'm doing this sort of ad hoc approach of just whack-a-mole fix linter failures bit by bit. I'm going to use a tool called LazyGit because I'm lazy, but you can also do this with git rebase -I, interactive rebase. But LazyGit shows you this little screen where you can tab to your list of commits right here in this section, lower left corner. And I can reorder these commits very easily. So I'm going to merge some of these together, some of the similar things. So I want to merge this function length linter with the cyclomatic complexity because they're functionally similar. So I hit Control J to move this down. So now you can see that those two commits are next to each other. And I'll show you them one at a time here. You can see the diff here in the top right corner. Or not even the corner, but the whole top right quadrant of the screen. So here you can see where I disabled the function length, and if I go down one, you can see where I disabled the cyclomatic complexity. So I'm going to merge these together. I hit the F button, and it asks if I'm sure, and I'll say yes. Now I'm going to hit R after that to rename it, because I want to say I did both. Disable the cyclomatic complexity and function length linter rules. So now those two commits are one. Now, typically, if I'm doing this on a large project, if I'm doing this ad hoc way, I will end up with potentially dozens or sometimes hundreds of commits where I added godoc. So let me do that as the next example. So I had added godoc to a couple different functions. So I'll take this one here at the top and move it down and merge it with this other one. So pardon me. So here's where I added godoc for is blocking, and then the godoc for bool value. I'm going to merge those together. I hit F, and yes, and then I'm going to rename again. I'm going to just say add some godoc for various functions. Now, if I were doing this, on a longer basis, I would probably have 24 of those godoc things. I might push those all into a single commit and make a single pull request out of that, because that's really easy for my colleagues to review, or my co-maintainer in this case, because he doesn't even have to think about moving code around or did I add bugs. He can see clearly that it's just documentation changes. All he has to do is read the paragraphs, make sure there aren't typos or spelling mistakes, and then it describes clearly what actually happened in the code. So that's the reason I wanted to demonstrate this approach. It's one I like to do a lot when I'm delinting, because you end up with hundreds potentially, or thousands even, of these trivial changes that each one individually is really easy to do and review. But if you do them all together, if you review them all together, it's almost impossible. So if you're doing code reviews, you can use this approach. Let me demonstrate how to do it with git rebase I also, if you don't have LazyGit installed. So you do git rebase -I, and then the master branch or main, or whatever your main branch is called. What did I do wrong? Oh, let me just get rid of that. So here it shows a list of all the commits I've made since master. And I could see if there's any I want to merge together. I don't know if there are any left, but there might be. I could merge these suppression ones together. So I delete the word pick and replace it with F or fixup. You can see the help text is here in this comment at the bottom. If you don't remember, you don't have to memorize it, but you can just read there. So now this is going to rebase, and when I get to that point, it's just going to squash those two together. And it's done already. If I look at the history here, git log, we should see only one of those suppress, and there it is. Now it has the wrong description though, because it's just talking about that one. So I'm going to do a rebase again. And I could have done this in one step last time, but I'm doing it 2 steps. Now I'm going to put R instead of pick, which is to reword the commit. So now when I save this, it reruns those commits, takes me to this one, and opens the editor for me to type in a new name for this commit. So I'm just going to say around false positives. I'm not going to say which linter, since now there's 2 or maybe even 3 linters that I'm suppressing those false positives for. And now the rebase is done again. I can look at the log, and you'll see that suppression one has the new message in it. So I think that's a good summary. Let me just do one more time here. Just run the linter on the command line and see what kind of failures we get. I'm sure there's probably hundreds remaining. And I'll probably be working on this for a while in my spare time. Oh, there's a good one. We have some global variables. That's probably okay in tests. That's where those are. Sometimes you need that. What else do we have? So here we're using some parentheses around something where we don't need it, so it could be simplified. There's several places here where the code could be just simplified without changing its meaning. Some potentially unsafe file permissions are being used here, so it's warning me about some security failures. Yeah, there's several things here, and there's probably many more because it usually stops after a certain number of failures. But we've made some progress on delinting this project. I'll probably continue on this at some point in some spare time and push up a pull request, or maybe more than one. Maybe I'll do one for each type of lint and see if I can get this merged into the Gopher.js project. So it's a little bit cleaner, and it won't annoy me quite so much next time I'm fixing a bug on that project. So are there any questions or comments? I do have about 10 minutes before I need to move on to a meeting I need to attend. Otherwise, I would keep going for another half an hour. But any questions or comments? And if not, just thanks to everybody who joined me. Thanks for helping me try to troubleshoot the sound, and for your questions and comments during the stream. I hope to do this again. I'm going to try to start doing this, I think, every week. And if nobody shows up, that's fine. It means I'll just hack some open source code every Monday afternoon by myself while nobody's watching, and that's fine too. So anyway, thanks for attending. Thanks for watching. Thanks for helping me do this. Hope to see you next week. If you have any questions in the meantime, leave a comment on the chat on the video, and maybe I'll make some follow-up videos and live streams on your question topics. So thank you, and see you next time. Oh, I see somebody asked a question, and I must have missed it. Trying to scroll up here to find it. I may have missed the question. I'm sorry. Can you repeat it? Or maybe it's on the. Maybe it wasn't in the chat. I'm not sure. Last 2 messages. So I'm sorry. I didn't realize the question. What I see is, I guess we need like a dot. I guess we need like a dot like in Python for that. So like a a placeholder. Okay. I've forgotten what I was talking about when you left that comment. I'm sorry, I've forgotten the context. My mind has already moved on to other things. What were we looking at then? Was it this? Go ahead, that. I'm not sure what. Let me see what that. My Python is really rusty. Let me see what that operator does in Python. The comments. comments in the switch case. Okay. Sorry, it's a little bit cumbersome here to try to remember what that was. Was it here? Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm having a brain fart here. I apologize. A placeholder. I'm sorry. If you want to maybe ask the question again in a little more complete context, I'll try to answer. Um, I've moved on so far that I've kind of forgotten. Went for no operations. Oh, I see what you're talking about. I see what you're talking about. So we could just disable the linter for that with the empty block. And if that's what we decided to do, let me just go back here. So yeah, I could definitely do the no lint thing. I could do that, for example. I think the reason I didn't do that right now is because I'm not sure if I really want to leave it there. Maybe I want to clean it up, but I'm not sure. And it's another one of those judgment calls. It's funny how many judgment calls you have in coding, right? If it were deterministic, we wouldn't need people doing it. We could just have computers do it. But it's because we need to make judgment calls all the time that they pay us to do this sort of stuff. So I don't know the answer. There's not a right or wrong answer here. Is what it comes down to. So can there be a placeholder for an empty block? I'm not sure what you mean by a placeholder. Like, can you just replace the curly braces with something else? I don't think so. You could put something in here to make it not look like an empty block. I could do something like this. I could assign a constant of 1 to nothing. Now it's not empty anymore, and it also doesn't do anything, so it probably compiles to exactly the same bytecode. But then it's confusing because now somebody comes by and sees this and like, what? What is that? So maybe I change it to intentionally empty block. I don't know. It's still kind of silly, I think. So, but there are things you could do to fool the tools into thinking it's not empty without actually changing your code. Anyway, you can't just do you can't just do the blank. Although you could do a blank label, I suppose. You could do that's probably the shortest thing you could do to make this no longer be empty. But it's confusing. If I saw that, I would be scratching my head and wondering what the hell is going on. So I definitely think the better approach is to, if you choose to do that, is to use a no lint and explain why. That way, some newbie coming by isn't going to be confused and think you just made a mistake. So that's how I would solve this problem if I decide that is indeed what I want. And I will make a call at some point whether or not to do that or to change the empty blocks, but not today. All right, thanks again. Hope to see you all next week or on my other videos. Talk to you later.